The president's record in education is pretty good, particularly for a Democrat. Democrats are typically very tied to teacher unions, and that makes it hard for them to push for tough-minded reforms. The president's been willing to talk about things like merit pay, tough teacher evaluations, more charter schools, and he's put some policy and political oomph behind those things as well. Still, there's been some real soft spots in his record, and what I would say are some real mistakes. Out there, you've got, for one thing, a lot of talk about flexibility and giving more authority to the states, but more rhetoric than reality.
In a lot of ways, Race to the Top is a groundbreaking approach to the federal role in education. It's a competitive grant that was going to make states make major changes. The problem is, the changes they promised to make, they didn't necessarily follow through on.
President Obama is very good on the education issue, and from a political standpoint, it's going to be hard for Republicans to attack him. Here's a guy who has co-opted a big part of the Republican message on education. He's in favor of a lot of reforms that used to be considered Republican ideas. Things like getting tough on teacher quality, promoting charter schools, more competition. So that gives the Republicans less room to maneuver. But that doesn't mean he's been perfect on the issue, and it doesn't mean that he doesn't have some soft spots in his record that his opponents might come after him on.
A lot of the changes that we saw in terms of removing caps on charter schools and expanding school voucher programs, really important programs that are benefiting students, did not come as a result of Race to the Top, but rather came as a result of the 2010 election, which was in a lot of ways a rebuke to Obama's policies.
So, the takeaway here is look, however much good President Obama did with Race to the Top, him losing the election big time in 2010 did even more good, at least for education reform, at least in the short term.
At the end of the day, Race to the Top set a big goal and promised, to be a sprint. And people didn't realize that over the course of the marathon, there will be problems.
We've got a waiver process with flexibility that added new conditions to the states that didn't actually provide them much flexibility. We've got his civil rights office out there telling schools that if they don't get a certain number of African American or Latino kids into advanced placement classes, they could be sued on discrimination grounds, even if they haven't. Getting kids ready for AP is going to be a 12-year affair, really pushing them to push more kids into AP, whether they're ready for it or not. So there are some parts of his record that are not very strong. Probably the weakest part of his record is on the big issue around spending and the deficit.
The stimulus package was important because it did keep teachers in classrooms at a time when unemployment was terrible. However, it was a golden opportunity that was not taken advantage of in a lot of ways. Rather than leveraging this to keep quality teachers in classrooms and have an honest conversation about class size and teacher policy, it ended up costing about $150,000 per teacher who ended up staying in schools, which is not a particularly efficient use of taxpayer money. And it really put off the problem for when the stimulus ran out.
What do we have to show for the $100 billion that we borrowed from China and spent over 2 years to bail out our education system? What do we have to show for it? I think that's emblematic of a larger issue, which is that we're spending a ton of money, we have a huge deficit, trillion-dollar deficits every year, and are we getting what we need from it? And I think that could be a part of a message that you might hear some Republicans trying out in the fall.